I'm not happy.
I don't need Elizabeth Warren or the government giving away my money.
Calling Mike Bloomberg an oligarch has implications in this country that I think are unfair and unreasonable.
I care. That's it.
Makes you think of some rich person who got their money off of oil in Russia, who's taking advantage of a broken and dysfunctional system.
Bernie Sanders saying, the country's corrupt, our system's corrupt. Be careful about that language, Bernie. You know, be careful.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
It's like a shark, NATO, except with poop.
Around the nation, Waldorf Nation, hey everybody, welcome to the show. Yes, we're back after this very long week off, and so it's good to be back. We got stories. We're going to talk about some things, and yes, we have a little bit of a new and different look. I'm still trying to iron things out, but I did work on quite a bit of stuff over this break. So why don't we get into what we're going to talk about today? So all right. So I got a story. I'm going to talk about Jamie Dimon. So now Jamie Dimon, big banker, said some stuff I actually agree with. But generally, I'm going to break down why it's kind of bullshit. And we'll do that. We've got Gaetz-Gate. It's getting even crazier. So I want to talk about that. We've got Fox News tries their hand at comedy, which is fun. We've got zombies, COVID zombies, even better. And then Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon turns out to be kind of a terrible person. I know I've kind of missed a boat on that one, but nonetheless, I still want to talk about it because I think it's really, really important. Yes, no green screen. I'm working on the set right now. It's just kind of super bare bones. You know, all that stuff. And I'm also working on the sound. So now I have a mixer that's all set up, and I'm actually hoping so I can use it to bring like guests on the show. And so, you know, more guests, more fun, more commentary, all that good stuff. So, oh yeah, Gutfeld, that's big Jeb energy right there. How's the sound, by the way? I haven't got to test this yet. You're like my guinea pigs, all right? You are helping me test my sound because I'd have no one else to test it with. Sad. Where do you get the shirt? I mean, they're fairly easy to get. It's Dark Souls. So you should be able to find it at your local store. All right. Anyway, oh good. I'm glad it sounds good. So let's get into it. Let's dive into Jamie. The story about Jamie Dimon. Oof. All right. Let me see if I got this right. No, okay, great. Banker and arch villain Jamie Dimon is coming out with some pretty good words about income inequality. In fact, here's what he said in a recent annual letter to JP Morgan shareholders. Quote, many of our citizens are unsettled, and the fault line for all this discord is a fraying American dream. The enormous wealth of our country is accruing to the very few. In other words, the fault line is inequality. So now the guy, of course, is very much qualified to talk about this, as he is one of the people that all the money went to. I think he's worth over $1 billion. Yes, so he's not quite Jeff Bezos level wealth, but the guy has more money than any of us could ever spend in one lifetime, generally. All right. So he continues. He says, the cause is staring us in the face, our own failure to move beyond our differences and self-interest and act for the greater good. Okay, do you know where this is going? Hopefully he's basically referring to us. As in his fellow rich people. Because if he's not, well, then that's bad. That means that he's blaming all these economic issues on the voters, the regular people who are the ones being screwed over. So now let's dive into it. Let's see, right? He said, the good news, though, is that it's fixable. The Chinese, oh, here we go. The Chinese see in America that's losing ground in technology, infrastructure, and education, a nation torn and crippled by politics, as well as racial and income inequality, and a country unable to coordinate government policies, fiscal, monetary, industrial, regulatory, in any coherent way to accomplish national goals. Unfortunately, recently, there is a lot of truth to this. Interesting. Diamond added that economic growth in the U.S. over the last 2 decades has been painfully slow, while income inequality has increased with virtually no growth in income at the lower rungs of the economic ladder. Now, so far, of course, he talks about the effects of what's going on. And those are demonstrably true. Okay, you can look at political polarization. Yes, are we more polarized than before? Absolutely. Are we, even more divided? Are the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer? Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, yeah, he's right about this stuff. In fact, I've got some data to really kind of back it up, to make the point. According to Pew Research, the middle class, which once comprised a clear majority of Americans, has been shrinking, and therefore a greater share of the nation's aggregate income actually goes to the upper income households, and the share of going to middle and lower income households is falling. So there's as I mentioned, middle class shrinking. Not there anymore. And it's because a lot of this money goes to the very, very rich. So again, if you want to talk about income inequality and the fact that people who are incredibly wealthy, again, you're talking about your Jeff Bezoses and your Bill Gates and all them. Well, then, yeah, that's where all the money's going, essentially. All right, you want to talk about that? That's great. Well, what do we do about it? Well, he's not done yet. And in fact, I'm not done yet either. I've got more stats for you, which are interesting about, how bad this is actually getting, how much money is going to the rich compared to everyone else. In fact, since 1980, incomes have increased faster for the most affluent families, those at the top 5%, and for families in the income strata below them. The top 1% incomes grew 5 times as fast as the bottom 90% of incomes from 1979 to 2015. And of course, there are reasons for that. The reasons being that people aren't getting paid. And regular people, they go to work, they bust their ass, they're not getting money for it. At least not enough to survive. So now you've got the issue of disappearing benefits. What jobs do people have that really offer comprehensive health benefits anymore? I mean, you really don't see any. Okay. You also have recessions where banks, for example, Bank of America, all those other giant banks kind of crash the economy and create these recessions when they, of course, do like derivatives and all these financial tricks in order to basically get rich. You have executive bonuses that are massively huge. You have hedge funds that do short sales, basically encouraging companies to go bankrupt, betting on them to go bankrupt, and then reaping profit from that while people lose their jobs. You've got the vulture capital firms that specifically buy out companies that are going bankrupt in order to take them over, load them up with debt, liquefy the assets, and sell it off, as well as fire everyone who works there. All right. And then, of course, you have increasing prices for homes. You have increasing prices for education. For example, college costs over 1,000% since the 1960s. And then, of course, you have the cost of healthcare that continues to dramatically increase. And so you've got all these things that are working against regular people. You have all these things working against the middle class. Wells Fargo is another good one. Another good example of a company, of a bank that helped crash the economy back in 2008. Now, Diamond also pointed out that 30% of Americans make less than $15 an hour, which he added is barely a living wage. Oh, great. Now, it's not a living wage. In fact, if wages increased with productivity, the minimum wage would actually be about $23 an hour. If wages rose as fast as CEO pay, however, it'd be nearly $40 an hour. But of course they didn't. Right now, the federal minimum wage is stuck at about $7.25. $7.25 an hour. That's horrendous. As another result of the inequality, of course, 40% of all Americans have a difficult time affording a $400 emergency. And now 17% of the adults in the U.S. said that they're not able to fully pay off all of their current month's bills. And of course, it got worse as a result of the pandemic. Diamond wrote this. The COVID-19 pandemic, for which our nation was totally unprepared, capped by the horrific murder of George Floyd, shoved into the spotlight our country's profound inequities and their devastating effects. Inequities that have been there for a long time. Once more, our country suffered, and at least well-off individuals suffered the most. Unfortunately, the tragedies of the past year are only the tip of the iceberg. They merely expose enormous failures that have existed for decades and have been deeply damaging to America. According to Diamond, the other issues facing the U.S. include capitalism versus economic systems. Oh, that's an interesting discussion. Healthcare, immigration policy, and the U.S.'s leadership role globally. He said that institutions such as government, school, media, and business have lost credibility in the eyes of the public. And now, again, a lot of that stuff he's not wrong about. He's actually spot on about some of the problems. However, we're going to get to a part where we massively disagree. And that's, of course, when it comes to solutions. Now, of course, he wants to raise the wage to $15 an hour. I'm, of course, in favor of that. I think it should go higher. I think it should go to the point of where it was tied to, where it basically kept up with inflation or CEO pay. Again, $15 an hour versus $23 versus $33 an hour. That's what it takes now to live with dignity in this country. And so, again, he's not wrong about all this, but where he is wrong is he says the consequences of the failures that it fuels is populism. Now, he says that as if it's a bad thing, and then goes on to try to basically equate both sides. Like, you got populism on the left, which is bad. Populism on the right, that's bad. And they're both bad. The populism bad. We don't like that. Okay, well, now hold on here. Okay. But first, let me get to the quote. He says, populism is not policy. We cannot let it drive another round of poor planning and bad leadership that will simply make our country's situation worse. So now, look, he's talking about Trump. Was Trump an effect of populism? Yes, but he was not a populist. And that's the thing. Yes, he is a populist in the fact that he basically parroted and told everybody what they wanted to hear. And by everybody, basically people who are racist, sexist, misogynistic, etc., right? Homophobic, all that stuff. He told those people what they wanted to hear because they were the most malleable. They were the most easy to manipulate into voting for him. Because thinking people, smart people, generally didn't go for Donald Trump. We saw through this. We saw through the, through the bullshit, okay? And it's like, this dude seems like he's trying to take us for a ride by telling us everything that he thinks that we want to hear. And in reality, his policies were not populist at all. Massive tax cuts on the rich, deregulation, didn't do anything about climate change, really messed up when it came to COVID-19. That's what lost him the election, in my opinion. And so he did a lot of things that were not populist. And so to equate him as a populist and to equate him to people like, say, Bernie Sanders, who is more populist, is pretty disingenuous, okay? And so now the populism, as I said before, espoused by Bernie Sanders is not just popular, it's also good policy. For example, Medicare for All ends up saving money in all the studies that have been talked about, that have been, that have come out about Medicare for All, show that it is not only leads to better outcomes, but it also, as I said, is actually cheaper when it comes to the government. And so when it comes to expenditures in healthcare, turns out cutting out the blood-sucking middlemen that are the insurance companies actually leads to lower prices. Not only that, but also reining in pharmaceutical companies that right now have been getting billions and billions of dollars in subsidies and giveaways. For example, the COVID-19 vaccine. Get it if you can. And I encourage everyone to go and get that vaccine. But understand that I did a report a couple of days ago where these companies, they're like, well, once the pandemic is considered to be over, we're going to massively upcharge our COVID vaccine. Now, the problem with that, of course, is that for one, you're like massively going to increase the price on something that is publicly funded in the first place. We already paid for that. Like, yes, you did the research, actually colleges and things like that did a lot of the research, but a lot of this research was basically publicly funded. Massive giveaways in most of these cases. I think there was one company that didn't take any federal monies to develop their vaccine, but the rest of them did. And so to turn around and charge us more for this vaccine, it's the same game that they've been playing for decades. It's the same game that they played with, for example, Pharma Bro played with that one drug, turning it around and selling it, marking it up for a massive amount of money. They do the same thing with the EpiPens. And so you have this system that is extractive and trying to extract everything they can from you in order to go into their pockets. And you just happen to need that to survive. And so, yeah, that's a big problem here. And Bernie Sanders and people who advocate for Medicare for All also advocate for reining in those companies and eliminating health insurance companies, which are essentially a middleman at this point. Okay. Not only that, but raising the minimum wage. He even talked about, Diamond also talked about the minimum wage. Oh, it's only $15 an hour. Well, what do you think? Who do you think started this conversation, or at least brought it into the national spotlight? It was Bernie Sanders back when Obama and everyone else was talking about raising it to $10 an hour. There's more, taxing the rich. Taxing the rich is a super popular idea, and now it's one that the Biden administration is also talking about as well, in order to fund a massive infrastructure project. So these things, yes, they are popular because it turns out that they're good ideas. And so dismissing them for being, just populist, again, bad, terrible position. And I say that he's dismissing them because he dismisses the messenger. He's dismissed Bernie Sanders, as well as everyone that is basically the social democrats that are in Congress right now. And so these policies, this is where populism and good policy meet. And remember, Bernie Sanders is, I know this is going to blow some of your minds, right? Bernie Sanders is not a wild-eyed socialist. He is not the second coming of Karl Marx, okay? He's not advocating for you to throw off the chains of your oppression and seize the means of production. Okay, that's not what Bernie Sanders is saying. Bernie Sanders is saying, hey, you know what we could do? We could actually take our immense wealth and guarantee health care for every person in this country, every man, woman, and child, just like they do in all other countries. Hey, yeah, that'd be a great idea. Hey, you know what else? Pay people for work. Yeah, I know. Great idea. And maybe not let 18-year-olds take out tens of thousands of dollars in high interest debt in order to get an education that is, in my perspective, overpriced. that might get you a job that pays $17 an hour. Bernie Sanders is the most responsible politician, not the loosest and craziest. True. Very true, Doug. Very, very true. And so that's the thing. People like Jamie Dimon and the establishment paint Bernie Sanders as someone who is crazy. Oh, crazy leftist. No. Not a crazy leftist. Actually, somebody who has sensible policies that make sense and would actually do a tremendous amount of good. These are things that we can easily do in this country because they've done it in all these other countries. And the only negative thing that they've had is less billionaires, which honestly we could do with a few less billionaires. Just saying. But now, anyway, not only that, but Bernie also says bring back unions. I'm a strong proponent of bringing back union power in this country because right now we need it. We need it. So, all right. Now, Dimon does say, as I pointed out, he wants to fix things, right? Fix the problems of inequality. But the thing is that the things that he proposes really do tweak around the edges. That will continue to perpetuate the system as it is. Nothing that's really going to actually fix the problems. Again, it goes back to, change on the outside, continuity on the inside. Because again, this is a system, and honestly, this is the only system a lot of us have ever known. It's the only system that Jamie Dimon has ever known. And so he's gotten incredibly rich off of this system, incredibly wealthy and fortunate off this system. And so, of course, he's going to advocate for things that generally preserve the status quo. And again, I'm also not saying that Bernie Sanders and AOC and all the social democrats in Congress want to do away with the system. Nobody's saying that. In reality, they're kind of bringing it back to the center. And that's what this is. All right. That said, Jamie Dimon is still on the right. Now, I don't mean the right side as in the correct side, but on the right wing side of this conversation. Again, remember, he says, okay, yeah, I'm open to being taxed because I can lose, a few $100 million, in taxes or whatever a year. And it's not going to significantly affect my life. It's not going to affect me at all. But at the same time, he says, but tax my income, not my wealth. Now, here's what he says. He says, we should tax the rich more, but wealth tax, it's just too complicated to actually make it work. We should tax them its income. Now, the problem with that, taxing people's, rich people's income is, generally it's easier to dodge income taxes as a very wealthy person. Okay. They don't get paid through normal means, like everyone else. Okay. They actually end up getting a lot of their wealth through stock, options, capital gains, dividends, things that allow them to be able to skirt taxes in ways that most of us wouldn't even consider because we don't have those options available to us because we are normal wage earners. All right. And not only that, but Jamie Dimon also thinks that Trump's tax cuts were great for the economy and as well as, deregulation. So Dimon is essentially pro-establishment and he's in favor of tiny little bits of incremental change and no for things like Medicare for all. No, we're not going to mess with capitalism. Of course, we're going to keep capitalism intact. Again, the system has served me very well. And so I want to keep it. I want to keep it. Okay. And at the same time, he understands that because it doesn't work for other people, they've got to do something. And they got to do something because if you don't, the pitchforks are coming. And this is what rich people across the country are starting to see. It's what big corporations are starting to see. All right. And so it's literally self-preservation. It's gotten to the point of where it's so bad. And I think January 6th was a big wake up, even though this had nothing to do with economics. It had nothing to do with economics. That action in itself, seeing a violent mob storm the Capitol building, was enough to spook everyone. And that's the thing. It's enough to spook so many people. And so, you know, that's really got them very, very concerned. And so now the thing is, I'm actually fine with some of these changes. I think if you do that, you do some of these changes, you tax the rich more, you know, you tweak healthcare to cover more people and, you know, do it a cheaper way. Great. Okay, sweet. Now, the problem is that these things on their own, they're not going to fix the real issues. They're not enough. They're not enough. Yes, $15 an hour. It's good. I'd take the win, but it should be $23 an hour. It should be more. Okay? And it should be tied to productivity, at least. And at the end of the day, we would have far less of what he purports to be against, and that's income inequality. We should also have guaranteed health care for everybody through Medicare for all without out-of-pocket expenses, premiums, deductibles. We should have a guaranteed public education. We should change the way that we fund education. And really, if we want to save our world from climate change, climate devastation in time, we really might want to think about moving beyond capitalism and imperialism, but that's just me. That's just my suggestion here. But the fact is that, yes, though Diamond is proposing some light and modest solutions, which would help people, the fact is that we are facing deep systemic problems that require very deep, complex solutions that are bold, and they're not willing to do that. Okay? He's papering over what is essentially functional rot and foundational rot, and ignoring the role that he himself has played in perpetuating the systems by actively, of course, going after people who are offering more robust solutions. And that's the problem. It seems pretty hypocritical to be concerned about this stuff while then shitting on the same people who are trying to do something about it. It's almost as if they don't want to really fix those core issues, but maybe just give people just enough so that they feel safe from the pitchforks. Okay. Let's go to Gaetz-Gate. Just some fun stuff. Appears that Matt Gaetz is in a little bit of trouble. So he's been accused of sex trafficking a minor, a 17-year-old girl, and is the subject of an investigation that started under the Trump administration involving his friend Joel Greenberg. Now, Gaetz denies that Gaetz-Gate ever happened. And by the way, the reason we got that name was ironically from Matt Gaetz. He's like, if I ever have a scandal, I want it to be called Gaetz-Gate. Wish granted, sir. Wish granted. Now, he says he's the victim of an extortion scheme, and it turns out, according to new information, that might actually have some truth to it. For that, I go to the Daily Beast. On Monday, they reported that Air Force veteran and research consultant Bob Kent had verified to Sirius radio personality Michael Smerconish that he had approached Gaetz' father, former Florida Senate President Don Gaetz, last month seeking a $25 million loan. Now, the funds would ransom the release of a man named Robert Levinson. Levinson is a former Federal Bureau of Investigation agent who disappeared in Iran more than a decade ago. Levinson's old family still believes him to be dead, but Kent says he's got the evidence. I got the evidence that he is alive and remains a hostage of the Islamic Republic, even though no one else agrees. Like, everyone else is like, no, we're pretty sure the guy's dead. So, to recap, the guy wanted $25 million to pay a ransom for a person who may or may not be dead, but everybody believes that he's dead, and then tried to get Gaetz' dad to loan that money. So now, what's the extortion scheme here? What is this? Well, the extortion here is that I guess he had said, well, hey, I think you're under investigation. Might be able to help you with that. Oh, okay. That's fascinating. So now, how is that related to the sex trafficking charges? Well, again, that investigation was about the sex trafficking charges. And so now the funny thing about this is, this guy have any power to make any investigation go away? Is that something that he can do? Did he promise to do that? Does he actually have the power? This whole thing's wild. All right. And so it just keeps getting more confusing. But more details. Now, Kent did say that he was aware at the time that Gaetz had some legal issues, and suggested that assisting the mission would create goodwill towards the congressman. Hey, I know you're being investigated for, blanking a 17-year-old, and then trafficking her across state lines from where it is not legal to where it is legal, where the age of consent is lower. And so, we know you're in a little bit of trouble for that. Front me $25 million to help me get this family out, and there will be some goodwill coming your way. What? Again, real strange. Now, Kent did flatly deny that he went so far as extortion, which it sounds very extorty to me. Quote, I never threatened the man. Matter of fact, it was the opposite. I told him if he decides not to help us, he'll never hear from me again. I can't help how it sounds. I mean, it sounds pretty bad. No matter what, it sounds quite terrible, actually. A little bit like a quid pro quo offer, like, hey, you loan me money, I can help you out, the goodwill, and your issues maybe could be. We don't know if that conversation happened about the legal issues, but hey, if you don't help me, then I'm not gonna help you. Just saying. Again, either way, any way you slice it, it does not look good. And yes, that's an unintentional pun here, because after all, it's being called Pizza Gates as well, which is great. So now, all this is not to say that Matt Gaetz is in the right here. This is a situation where there are no good guys, and I've talked about this a lot. Okay, so now, if Matt Gaetz didn't do anything wrong, why did he allegedly beg the former president in order to give him a blanket pardon? So let me give you an article, or a snippet of an article here from the New York Times. Quote, in the final weeks of Mr. Trump's term, Mr. Gaetz privately asked the White House for blanket preemptive pardons for himself and unidentified congressional allies for any crimes they may have committed, according to two people. Discussion. Around that time, Mr. Gaetz was also publicly calling for broad pardons from Mr. Trump to thwart the bloodlust of the Democrats. Or, I'm sorry, of the radical socialist left, or whatever he calls the Democratic Party. It's ridiculous. Now, at the same time, Justice Department investigators have begun questioning Mr. Gaetz' associates about his conduct, including whether he had a sexual relationship with the aforementioned 17-year-old that violated sex trafficking laws. So again, that happened under Trump, under William Barr, and then as we saw, Trump pardoned a bunch of people, like Steve Bannon, who ripped off Trump supporters, built the wall, and then bragged about it. The best people, the greatest people. But he didn't pardon Matt Gaetz or Rudy Giuliani. And now, after days of silence, Trump did come out to defend him. So now, this is after one Trump confidant had told the Daily Beast, quote, the reason you haven't seen people in MAGA world defend Gaetz is less about him being unpopular, which he is in a lot of circles, and more about the fact that he hasn't done a single thing to make people comfortable to defend him. His interview with Tucker was an absolutely embarrassing train wreck. Now, you all remember this one. This is where, and I've got the video. This is where Gaetz tries to drag Tucker into this. It's hilarious. Take a look.
I can say that actually you and I went to dinner about 2 years ago. Your wife was there, and I brought a friend of mine. You'll remember her. And she was actually threatened by the FBI, told that if she wouldn't cop to the fact that somehow I was involved in some pay-for-play scheme, that she could face trouble. And so I do believe that there are people at the Department of Justice who are trying to smear me, providing for flights and hotel rooms for people that you're dating who are of legal age is not a crime.
I don't remember the woman you're speaking of or the context at all, honestly. But I would like to know who. So they're saying there is a 17-year-old girl who you had a relationship with. Is that true? And who are they? Who is this girl? What are they talking about, the New York Times?
The person doesn't exist. I have not had a relationship with a 17-year-old. That is totally false.
So what happens next? I mean, you can see there is this investigation, I guess a criminal investigation. I'm not quite sure where the sex trafficking part comes in. I don't, again, for the fifth time, I don't really understand the story very well. But where does it go from here? I mean, you've made an allegation against someone by name on the air and accused him of trying to extort millions of dollars from your family. What happens tomorrow?
Well, what was supposed to happen was the transfer of this money that would have implicated the former colleague of these current DOJ officials. But that's obviously not going to happen tomorrow because the New York Times story was leaked in order to quell that investigative effort.
Okay. Oh, I love it. Taco's like, no. You need to climb under that bus. All right. You were not dragging me down into that. I don't remember anything that you were saying. Love the bus. So good. Now, Trump, on the other hand, did actually come out to defend Matt Gaetz. In a statement, he said, Matt Gaetz has never asked me for a pardon. It must also be remembered that he totally denied the accusations against him. Oh, yes. He denied the accusations. So, all right, well, hey, I guess we're done. Gaetz, it's over. That's it. Pack it up, everybody. We're done. Not to the next story. No. It's ridiculous. Okay, it's ridiculous. Who's lying here? A president and a congressman who are both incredibly shady, sketchy people, or anonymous sources speaking to the New York Times about the alleged pardons. I don't know. It's getting wild, though. That's for sure. All the stuff coming out about Matt Gaetz, including him allegedly showing naked photos to, or of women that he had apparently slept with to other people in order to prove his name. I mean, who does that? Oh my God, if even one of those happened to be underage. Hey, QAnon, found your pedo. Just saying. I mean, no, look, he's a creepy dude no matter what. All right, we know, and none of this information clears him from any of the allegations. Again, we don't know the facts on this, but it does make the thing just even more complex and incredibly fascinating. Can't wait to keep watching. Crazy as Biden rebuilding the border after this thing is a bad thing to do. Yeah, it's crazy how that works. It's almost as if politicians happen to lie. That's weird. Gaetz' main defenders, Jim Jordan and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Oh, God. It's true. True. Look, if you're looking for me to defend Joe Biden in this show, then you're watching the wrong show. Of course I'm not going to defend Joe Biden. I talked about how his camps on the border are still camps on the border left over from Trump. He's still doing it. So, no. Again, if you're out here to say, if you're going to come into my feed, be like, oh, yeah, about the Biden bad. Agreed. Biden bad. Sure. Leftover from Obama, too. It's true. True. But I'm going to try to give you the factual information as well as to why exactly Biden's bad. And why Republicans are bad and all that stuff. All right, let's move on. Let's go to some comedy. I think you're gonna enjoy this. Fox News' Greg Gutfeld. Start that again here. Fucking, God damn it. You can tell it's the first day back after a long time. Can't even talk anymore. Fox News' Greg Gutfeld has a comedy show. I want to show you what passes for right-wing comedy.
All right, here we are again, a brand new show and a brand new Greg. I'm as giddy as Kamala Harris explaining kids in cages. Or Woody Allen hearing about kids in cages. If you've been watching the GG show on Saturdays, welcome. If you love the Five and felt the need for more GG, that's awesome. If you ended up here because you thought your TV was the microwave oven, it's good to see you, Mr. President. Your pizza will be warm in 2 minutes, and Hunter, he brought the extra cheese. You all made a great choice. For proof, over at MSNBC, let's see what Brian Williams is up to right now.
Good evening, I'm Brian Williams, and I am on Mars. Yes, I jumped on a chopper and now I'm on Mars. I've been here for a year now. I built a castle here made of mastodon carcasses and marshmallows. This is where I invented all the COVID vaccines, as well as penicillin, the smartphone, and Fluffernutter.
What the fuck was that? Yikes! Oh, that's painful. Jesus Christ! I don't even get the what's with Hunter Biden with the cheese? What? Oh, geez. All right. Hey, but you know, at least he's not punching down, right? I mean, that's normally what conservative comedy is about. And he's not punching down. I mean, he's hitting corporations. That's something, right?
So screw you, MLB. Your stupid exhibition game is about as entertaining as a match of cornhole on ESPN at 3 a.m. in the morning. And screw Delta and screw Coke. In fact, screw all corporations. You stupid execs are cowards and bad golfers. You cheat on your taxes and you cheat on each other. I hope Dems raise the corporate tax to 99%, except on Fox, which should be tax exempt. Maybe I'm turning socialist, but after years of proclaiming corporations as engines of free markets, I realize they're locomotives run by meth heads who'll do anything to save their own hides. It's profit over people, no matter how many inclusion coordinators they hire. They'll turn a blind eye to China's slave labor, knowing that adding a diversity fun run to whatever History Month currently celebrated will stoke the woke in human resources.
Welcome to the resistance, Comrade Gutfeld. Oh my, who knew that woke corporations would drive people on the left, or to the left, on economic issues? That's seriously though, it's what? This is something, all right. Oof. All right. So let me give you some. Oh boy, that was terrible. Jesus Christ. Okay, but let me give you some factual information to kind of rescue your brain from the garbage, right? Which is where you would want to put it after watching Greg Gutfeld. I'm just saying. The reason that the right wing, and you've noticed this is probably a theme that you've noticed, okay? Republicans are big mad at corporations now. And that's one of the craziest things that I've heard over my, week-long break. Is that, hey, oh wow, yeah, you know what? We're mad at Coca-Cola now. Okay, well, add it to the list of corporations that the right wing has been angry about. I mean, y'all remember people burning their sneakers, like over Nike, and before that, like destroying their Keurigs. I mean, the right wing has a history of boycotting corporations for doing like just about nothing, essentially. Like, we affirm that human rights are human rights. Oh, how dare you? human rights. No, there are certain humans that shouldn't have human rights. I'm going to burn my Keurig. It's pretty ridiculous. Now, the big reason here, Coca-Cola, is that, you know, they're mad at these corporations, Coca-Cola, because they're against the Georgia voting laws, the voter restrictions. Okay. Now, these companies still give massive amounts of donations to Republican politicians. Republican politicians, like, they get tons of money to basically funnel more money back to the rich and corporations, and as well as, you know, deregulate them. And so that still happens. The only difference here is that these companies are suddenly like, oh, yeah, it turns out we like it when people can practice democracy. And again, that was enough for Greg Gutfeld to ironically punch up at a corporation for like the wrong reasons. And so it really is interesting. Now, the Georgia voter law, I've talked about this before. Here's what it does. Among other restrictions, it makes absentee voting hard, drastically cuts down on the number and accessibility of drop boxes during early voting, bars anyone who is an election worker from offering food and drinks to voters waiting in line. These people end up waiting in line sometimes for hours and hours at a time, 4 to 8 hours. Can you imagine voting, standing in line for 4 to 8 hours, 4 to 8 hours? I didn't say 48, 4 to 8 hours, and or 2 hours, whatever, and not being allowed to have a drink. I mean, that's ridiculous. What is this? And Gutfeld also, by the way, talked about in his monologue, he basically punched down at people who couldn't get an ID to vote. So now who doesn't get an ID to vote? Well, generally, like a driver's license is considered an ID, right? Or you have to get a special state ID, or you can own a gun. That also works. Now, people in the inner city, however, generally in poorer urban areas, minorities, poorer white people who live in those areas as well, generally tend to take public transportation, so they don't need a driver's license or any kind of special ID. And that special ID, of course, is a pain in the ass to get. Of course you can get it, but you have to invest time. You have to go down. You have to find time off work. Maybe you're off your 2 or 3 jobs to try to go and get that ID. So basically, it's a gigantic pain in the ass that fundamentally you shouldn't have to go through. And that's the argument that I make against having the requirement for voter ID. Why should we have to jump through all those hoops, especially when it's shown that voter fraud is incredibly rare? We shouldn't. It's just what it is it's just a roadblock that is put in the way intentionally to get people, to discourage them from voting, because it turns out when less people vote, Republicans tend to win. And that's the thing. Okay. Weird how that turns out. Now, what's interesting here is that Coca-Cola and these companies don't really have that big of a dog in the fight. I mean, again, sure, if Republicans win, they get tax cuts and deregulation. That's good for them. It's good for their executives. But then why would they side openly with socially liberal people on these issues? Because we won the culture war. It's true. We have won the culture war. Conservatives are now the counterculture. And boy, they've dove right into it. They are the counterculture of disaffected white conservatives and religious people. That's who this appeals to, by the way. If you're watching Gutfeld, you're usually somebody who's a disaffected white person. You are mad that minorities get to vote. You are mad, right, that there are people out there that don't like it that you're against trans rights or gay rights, things like that. Or that you're in favor of people making their own bodily, decisions about their body. Okay. There's that. Okay. That's who finds this funny. And yes, they are punching up in this case, but that's because they're no longer considered in the mainstream. This is why they rail against cancel culture, despite the fact that they, of course, were the ones that perfected cancel culture back when they were in the prevailing mainstream. Remember, it used to be the fact that conservatives were dominant in the culture. And so what happens is that I've noticed a pattern. Society tends to swing between, being socially conservative and being socially liberal. Okay. You have your, conservative mainstream ideology versus your progressive ideology. Okay. And so interestingly enough, this has nothing to do with the economics. Back in 1960, when you had basically social conservatives that were running the show, the liberals were the counterculture, the anti-war movement was the counterculture. You actually had high tax rates on corporations, the wealthy, higher wages for workers, less income inequality, but only for white people, by the way. And so this is what they say when they want to make America great again. They want to bring it back to that point where essentially white people were doing really well and women stayed in the kitchen. I mean, that's really it. But mainly, this is not about economics. It never has been. Okay, this is about social issues. It's about their place in society, and their places, for them, they think that they belong on top. And the biggest irony of all, by the way, is that those same corporations they're railing against, they're the ones that are on the top. But again, the focus here is on so-called woke corporations. And they're doing this not because they're afraid of the activists on Twitter, but because they want to appeal to more people. Simply put, it's a business decision. It's not that they're scared of being called out on Twitter. It's just generally they're just like, yeah, I want to appeal to more people. I want to make more sales. That's really it. Racism, misogyny, homophobia, and transphobia, they're not really appealing to the general public. Most people don't give a shit if a man wants to marry another man, and generally agree that police officers should not kneel on the necks of black men who are subdued for 9 minutes to kill them. All right? And they also believe that everybody should be allowed to vote. But again, the new conservative counterculture looks a lot like the old one. Counter against any significant social progress to ensure that humans, are, not treated like humans. Because they don't care. If it's not them, if it's not in their family, if it's not in their tribe, if it's not in their people that look like them, they don't care about them. Overall, though, the fact that Gutfeld misses the point, the entire point of comedy, which is to be funny while also punching up, is why the right wing will always fail at comedy. All right. Let's go to the zombies. They don't understand comedy because it requires nuance and a keen awareness of the vibe of the audience. Yeah, it also requires creativity as well. Creativity is something that's more in line with, people who are artistic, people who tend to be a little bit more left-wing. I think. Yes, zombies. Zombies. It turns out a lot of people, myself included, were a bit disappointed by COVID not actually being the zombie virus. I know, very strange. But a certain televangelist hasn't quite given up the dream of having his arm gnawed off by a member of the undead. In fact, on Tuesday, Right Wing Watch flagged a segment on Jim Bakker's show where Steve Quayle, a far-right conspiracy theorist, suggested that COVID-19 nasal swabs are part of a government plot to create an army of face-eating zombies. Take a look.
Zombies that are on the earth are a disease like any other disease that affects people, and they become like zombies. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Forgive me, but that's only part of the story. Zombies also have the evil spiritual entity known as demon possession, okay? Because there is no rationale with a zombie. The best way to explain zombies' bloodlust is this: the appetite of demons expressed through humans. It should be astonishing to people that the richest people in the world, not all of them, but some of them, are into occult ceremonies where they have to drink, blood that's extracted from a tortured child. Now that's sick, but that's the appetite of demons expressed through humans.
Wow. Okay, zombies. We're talking about zombies, folks. It's funny because the guy actually combined this with a little bit of QAnon. Talking about the drinking of the blood of the children. Yes, the demons and eating of the zombies eating the flesh. Yes, and don't forget, it's the government. It's the government's fault. The government is taking your DNA. It's going to create Wait, wouldn't that be zombie clones if it was taking your DNA? Wouldn't they clone you and then turn you into or turn that clone into an imagine being eaten by yourself. Really strange. And look, people believe this stuff, and that's the saddest, most hilarious part of this. All right, and they believe it. They believe in this stuff. Now, compare this to, of course, belief in getting the vaccine. Right? There are polls. 45% of evangelical Christians, according to a new poll, refuse to get the COVID-19 vaccine. That problem is especially prevalent among right-wing men. Right-wing males not interested in getting the vaccine. They're just not. And not only that, but there's people out there, of course, a lot of Republicans that still believe that COVID-19 is a hoax. It's killed over 500,000 Americans. But no, it's a hoax. It's not dangerous. But also, by the way, if you test for it using the nasal swabs, then the government's going to manufacture zombies to eat your face. Is this the plot of a Resident Evil game? I don't know. Is that... I mean, I'm sorry. Of course, Resident Evil involves a corporation, not the government. Oh, no, of course not. My bad. But let's be clear. I think we can all pretty much be safe in saying that this is complete nonsense. Okay? Nonsense. No, COVID testing is not a government plot to make zombies, to make a zombified army for Satan. I mean, come on. People get tested to know if they have COVID. My wife, that's what she does for a living. She tests people for COVID right now, okay? Pretty sure she's not collecting DNA to make a Satan army, okay? I'm just saying. No, what's going on in here is obviously people who are doing the testing, the vaccines, they want to help people. They want to eventually vaccinate people so that we can all go back to normal. And that's it, or at least some semblance of normal. Going out to the movies, going out to eat at a restaurant, and not having to worry about giving your server COVID or getting it yourself from the table across the way. Or, how about not having your server have to come out in a hazmat suit? All right? That would be nice. That would be great. Getting back to sort of, again, some sort of normal. That's what we want. That's why you should get the vaccine, and that's why you should trust the medical science. And I know that people are like, oh, no, it's experimental stuff. Well, I hear that all the time. But, it has been thoroughly tested. It is safe and effective. Millions of people have already gotten the vaccine. And honestly, look, we're pretty good at doing imperialism, okay, here in America. We do an imperialism all the time. Now, in doing so, we also tend to keep the resources for ourselves. Vaccines are another thing that we also keep to ourselves, okay? That's what we're doing. We're keeping the vaccine. We're buying up all the vaccines, all the Western countries, but mainly the United States has bought so many vaccines that even Canada is having an incredibly hard time getting their hands on vaccines. Okay, they're having a difficult time. That's why their vaccination rates are fairly low. Ours are actually getting much, much better. And yet you have countries, in the developing world that are not doing well, that are not getting the virus. I'm sorry, they are getting the virus. They're not getting the vaccine for the virus. that can be a bit of a problem. Okay, especially when you're trying to eliminate these variants that come out. The UK variant is actually stronger. What happens if there is a variant that might actually turn into the zombie virus? Who knows? But let's get, everybody vaccinated. And so the overall point here is that Jim Baker's insane. Okay? Jim Baker has always been about scaring people with the end times in order to peddle disgusting, food buckets, prepper food buckets. And apparently it's a pretty good grift because it continues to work. He continues to do it. And he's making loads of money off it, probably more than I could ever see in my entire life. And I'm not saying, by the way, that people shouldn't prepare for disasters. No, of course. Hurricanes, floods, droughts, mass migration, food and water shortages, which, by the way, a lot of those will be the result of runaway climate change, and will happen probably roughly mid to the end of the century with more intensity due to the results of climate change. We don't do anything, but that's something that, of course, Jim Baker's not going to live to see, and therefore he doesn't really care much about it. But no, look, if you can, you're sure stock up on stuff for emergencies. Great. I wouldn't recommend the Jim Baker buckets. But maybe, dry foods, additional water, things like that, just in case there is an emergency. But I'm pretty sure satanic zombies are not something that you are going to likely need to prepare for. And that also, I will add that Jim Baker and Steve Quayle are both insane and full of shit. There's that. So. Oof. I love when Jim Baker used to have his entire cast eating the prepper food buckets and pretending to love the food on camera. Oh, disgusting. Just, whoa. All right. Let's see. That's really all I have time for, actually, today. So I'm going to go and I'm going to read some, if I have any super chats here. Let's go to your activity. Oh, I had some, and yet it didn't show up. I hate it when that happens. I really, really do. So let's go over to Twitch here. Revenue Wolverine, thank you for 6 months of Prime. Appreciate that. Tireless Fiver, thank you for subscribing with Prime. Also, Tempadan, thanks for cheering 50 bits. Tumbles25, thank you for the 200 bits. Much appreciated. That money will go to help get me a background. No, I'm working on it. Work in progress, so I don't look like I'm in a cell. All right. I know I look like I'm like in the middle of prison or something. Nope, not quite. Not quite. Let's see. Let me find that super chat because I don't want to go without thanking you for it. So let's do that. Here we go. Gabby Mathis says, arrest Gaetz and get it over with. True. And let's see. Sarge Tech says, Bernie's policies were best, Biden's were not. True. Very true. All right. Anyway, thank you for going around the nation today. Please like, share, stream if you haven't already. Thank you for donations. Please subscribe to all the wonderful stuff. Patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf as well. That's so you can support us or become a channel member. All the wonderful stuff. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Love you all. And we will see you back here tomorrow. And remember, change begins with you. Night Nation. See y'all later. Gypsy Mama, thank you for the very kind $20, by the way. All right. We'll see you later.
I like my meat tight.
dumps. Big, massive dumps.
I'm not happy. Amazing.
Please clap. They're kicking me out the door. They're kicking me out the door.